What is up, folks? It is your boy Turk here at SGN Hub, bringing you another developer interview with the one and only Ray, one of the head developers of ESG Football, co-founders, former professional gamer. Sorry for the stuttering and stumbling over words there. Looking to get some more community insight and some questions about potential releases, platforms where the game is going to be, and just some things that we see a lot of people asking in the comments, and ultimately just to get further insight on the game and figure out where we're looking to see some gameplay in the future. With those things being said, Ray, introduce yourself.
What's going on, Turk? Thank you again for having me back. And my name is Ray. I am one of the co-founders of ESG Football, and as Turk mentioned, former professional gamer turned, co-founder and developer of the game that we're now looking to release, which is obviously ESG Football. Pleasure to be here.
Yes, sir. Absolutely grateful to have you here, so we appreciate you being in. Folks, if you've been watching this game for obviously quite some time, we've been following it for almost collectively, like it's been 2 years total now, but a little bit over. Feels like it's longer than that. You know how much the momentum is ultimately building for the game, how far things have came, especially in terms of the community growth. And I feel like that is, in my opinion, one of the pivotal points whenever it comes to releasing any game, especially in this day and age, is having at least a group of people that are acclimated to the game, understand what it's about, and the way that the game is meant to be played and or perceived by the public. So with that being said, let's hop into some of these questions that I have posed for you today. All right, so hopping into the first question, this is one that I feel like is super important, and this might be something that even some of the people there in the Discord might like to hear the answer to. So at the current state of the beta, do you feel like the right kind of players are finding ESG right now, or is there still like a specific audience that you guys are trying to reach prior to launching the game?
No, I think right now the right audience is finding ESG. I just think at the same exact time, more is always welcomed. So, we've really had all types of people come on board, anywhere from professional athletes, guys who are in the NFL, to obviously, content creators and streamers who have also come on board, then to just, your regular old recreational gamer. And every single, different type of group is incredibly important, because the regular recreational gamer is still going to bring some unique meta to the game, and unique strategies and unique approaches, and they're also going to have certain things that they're looking for, whereas a professional athlete's obviously going to bring their own flavor to it. So honestly, we've had so many different types of individuals come through in so many different groups, but at the same exact time, it's just more and more is certainly welcome, because the more people that we have come through, the faster we can find things and obviously get those things fixed up.
If there's any like common ground, like among the people, the influx of people that are coming to test the game, do you feel like, not to deviate topic wise, do you feel like a lot of them are primarily still coming in from 2K, or do you feel like it's from like an exhaustion of the football market? Where do you feel like a lot of that's coming from currently?
Well, honestly, I couldn't tell you exactly if it's just, a bunch of Madden players or 2K players, or again, potentially just a melting pot of mixed in with both. I couldn't be 100% certain. I just do know that the people who have come through, really most of them are people who have been looking for something completely brand new in the space. They're kind of a little bit, worn down from what they've been getting year after year. And that's one thing that we continually hear from people playing the game is, of course, there's always feedback, there's always, critiques and so on and so forth, but they also definitely say that it's a breath of fresh air, right?
Yeah,
I get that a lot
sure.
In terms of what it is that we've developed here. So I'm super grateful for that. But again, just all types of gamers are certainly welcome, because again, everyone has their own perspective. And with that, even from console to PC to PlayStation or Xbox or whatever the case may be, everyone's kind of different in their own niche. So everyone is welcomed and also required at the same exact time, so we can get this thing as tight as can be.
Absolutely. So now, obviously, from first playtest, given having like a smaller batch of people with their hands on the game, from the time from the first PC playtest or the first early, maybe like internal playtest that you guys had, how much do you feel like the community feedback that you've gotten collectively has affected the game from then till now?
Well, I mean, their feedback has been, first off, an integral part of our growth, where we need every single piece of feedback and information and just testing that they can give us. At the same exact time, sometimes it's less about what they're saying and more about what they're doing, and me playing against them and just seeing what strategies they're bringing about and seeing where we can, make things as best as possible. So just in terms of metrics and attributes and sliders and all that type of, gameplay, that people are just going to try to find the glitchiest aspects of what they can do. And again, on my side, that's why I think it's important for the devs to participate in the
Hmm.
tournaments because, on one side you can say, okay, let's just sit back and watch, but at the same exact time, if we're able to see it in real time,
And
or
really experience
again,
it.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, a company that is founded by professional gamers, it's also something that we can just say, okay, let's just bring out the glitchiest things that we can think of, and then again, we're also able to see that in real time, but then also nerf it just days later, right? So I think really just one of those things that from the first playtest even till today, it's just really, really important, but it's really just been phenomenal so far.
So with in terms of like having the players hop into the game, kind of develop the way they want to play the game. Obviously, for the folks that don't know, we'll just repeat this to get it over with. 7v7, 11v11. Customize your own character, play the way you want to, attributes, badges. Allocate your stats. That when the game comes out, how do you feel about, is there like a non-negotiable level that you want the game to be received at in terms of the way that it's played, or do you are you kind of more hoping that there is people that can kind of find their ways to expand and be creative within the bounds of the game that you guys are creating, if that makes any sense?
Yeah, I mean, I would hope for that. I would hope for the latter, where I would just say
Hmm.
I really hope it's welcoming
Yeah,
to every single type of gamer. I am being honest in saying that, without a bias, I do think that it's going to gravitate more towards a competitive person, not to say
absolutely.
necessarily a professional gamer, but just more so someone who's just looking to sit forward in the chair
Oh,
and
for sure.
try to come up with a winning strategy. I think that's really where it's going to lean into that. And where if you have someone who's just like purely looking for a different type of experience, which is like an offline experience, so on and so forth, I just don't think that at this point right now that's going to be exactly what they want, just in being completely transparent,
Yeah.
because we have to grow to so many things over 6 months time or a year's time. I think we just harden every aspect of the game and get
Yes.
closer to those type of things. But I think from day one, in terms of hitting the ground running, it's really one of those things that if you're looking to play comp in any type of way, if you're looking to just really have strategy with a bunch of friends or strategy with a bunch of random people that you're playing alongside of, this is the game for you, in my opinion. And I honestly believe if that's what you're looking for, there's no game in the world like this.
Yeah, I honestly 100% echo that sentiment. Obviously I've played the game quite a bit myself. So in your mind personally, what do you feel like the game absolutely has to prove prior to, I guess basically opening the floodgates to a broader audience, or, having more people get, eyes on?
Well, besides, to the critics, the fact that we're real, I would say, I would say, what it is that we're looking to prove. Really, I would just say less so much in terms of proving anything to the community or to ourselves or anything like that. It's more so just about really focusing on making the type of game that we set out to make, which again is really just a competitive playground. In terms of our game, we've had several tournaments up to this point. We've been fortunate on the dev side to win many.
Hmm.
I'm the only, I'm the only
Fortunate.
three-time, yeah, exactly. So I'm the only three-time champion. But when I say that, I say that to say this: I really set out to make it a point that, at the time, everyone who plays this game plays it like it's Madden Day One, and I don't think that that's really a working strategy where you're just going to go out there and empty sets and pass every single play and look to go deep. And it's just not the way it works when you have all real users. So in our game, I wanted to make a point in the first tournament to win with a power run scheme. In the second game, wanted to go ahead and then try to open up in the passing game. Beyond that, then we went with some bigger receivers. So, then you go into RPO. Obviously, Bummy, shout out to Bummy, who just
Shout
won
out to
the
Bummy.
tournament this past weekend. He really executes the RPO incredibly well. So I just think in our game, when you have so many different styles of football, which is again naturally what football is, right? Just so strategic, that when you have that plus different type of personalities, it's really just going to bring so much competition. So less about us proving something and more about just us giving something to the community, excuse me. And that's really what we're hoping, that again they kind of see that and say, yeah, there's really no experience like this
Yeah.
for any other sports game.
Absolutely. And I honestly, I feel like I wish that it was a little bit easier, I think, to convey the truth to people these days, but it's so hard. Like back in the day, I know I mentioned it before, whenever you heard a game was in closed beta and there was an NDA and there was no gameplay, you just expected that until you heard the studio shut down. You know what I mean? It wasn't like it was the studio was either just like gone and you never saw the game, you never heard anybody say they played it, you just heard it was enclosed. You have a lot of hands-on. So to speak to the game being real, folks, I don't know how much more real or how many more people have to really co-sign or say that that they're in for you to believe this. You have access to the waiting room yourselves. We obviously always here at SGN post down in the comments, links to the waiting room, the Discord, and any ESG related content. Follow them and all that stuff. But folks, the game is real, and we wouldn't be interviewing the developers if it wasn't a real thing. So I guess more about, reveals, quote unquote, people seeing the game, more eyes on. Would you feel like there's any type of strategic reason that you guys have been careful of showing too much gameplay? I feel like personally, it's not even too much, because it's kind of odd to say, about the believing the game is real, because in that first trailer that a lot of people see where you're jumping through scaffolding and doing all of this stuff and running around, I try to express to people, like, that is what the game looks like. That you're seeing gameplay, you know what I mean? You're seeing what you're gonna look like whenever you're customized, and like, it's not like that was just some fictitious thing that was put together. What do you feel like it's more of a strategic thing, holding off in terms of like competition? Because obviously this is like one of a kind. It really is a one of a kind game. It's a one of a kind experience. Do you feel like it's important to kind of nestle that idea until it's fully fleshed out, or is there something further than that?
Yeah, I think one thing is first and foremost, as you mentioned before, what people were seeing was the game. So it wasn't like some AI rendition or concept type of thing. It was the actual game. It was the actual graphics. It was the gameplay. Now, in terms of the skins and the avatars and things like that, we've naturally improved on our characters, on our models, on our textures, on our lighting.
Yeah.
So yeah, it certainly looks more improved from those trailers, but at the same exact time, in terms of the gameplay, it was really pretty much exactly that. So that was one thing that we felt like we gave our sneak peek to the game, but then after that, and kind of we're able to draw some interest from people, we really just wanted to make sure that we focused on the product, right, and making sure that we can get the best product we could. And the thing that people don't realize is, if you're doing a trailer, if you're showing a bunch of gameplay and that's what your focus is, unfortunately, when you have an incredibly small team, you're not able to do everything.
Yeah.
So for us, we really just had to focus our efforts on tightening up in terms of the gameplay, any bugs, obviously onboarding a ton of people, working with a bunch of content creators who then heard about our product and wanted to play our product, and then obviously recreational gamers doing the same exact thing, obviously talking to potential investors and getting them on board. There's so many things where then showing the gameplay, when we already had shown so many things in terms of trailers, just wasn't our focal point, because naturally when you do that, the problem is that then you obviously are, even if you don't give a release date or a timeline, you're also just naturally showing things, and it can become stale.
Yeah.
So we didn't want to really do that and set ourselves up in that position where we just wanted to say, look, if you want to see the product, you're more than welcome to actually come and play it.
Yeah, you
right?
can try
and, exactly, and that was the big thing for us. I certainly could understand someone saying, hey, we haven't seen gameplay, we would like to know what's going on. But for anyone who obviously had a PC at the time, or now a PlayStation, they could literally just come play.
Yeah, you could just come give it a try.
Exactly. So that was really just our thing. It really came down to nothing more than us just wanting to focus on the task at hand of getting it finalized into the place that we liked it. And when you have these, play tests with thousands of people who have now played the game, the thing about it is that, again, so many different strategies mean so many different ways that they can find what's wrong with the smallest thing. And again, these guys are really, really, really good gamers. So it's just one of those things that we just have to constantly go back and say, okay, we got to nerf this a little bit or buff that a little bit. And we're constantly doing that. So that was really, again, what really took our main focus, while at the same exact time, of course, trying to get the right type of partnership.
Sure. And that makes a lot of sense. And I feel like, to kind of even play into more, the idea of the marketing, I think a lot of people genuinely just underestimate the development process of games and the NDA process, the things that can go wrong whenever things, are released prior to when they shouldn't be. And I think people need to give developers a little bit more grace in this day and age, especially smaller development teams, nonetheless. Looking down the road in particular, for ESG, what do you think community-wise is, I guess you would say, your biggest hope for the development team and the community to both, grow together in terms of like bouncing that feedback, back and forth? What kind of rapport are you looking to have post-launch? Like, how do you guys, I guess you could say the best way to form that is, how do you guys maintain that relationship with the people that were at the core of ESG, to keep that identity going throughout its lifespan?
Yeah, I mean, just in terms of what we're hoping when it comes down to the community, and this is kind of like, I can't state this enough, is just that, being civil first and foremost. And the reason I say that is because we're playing a competitive
Very
game.
competitive game.
It's naturally, football in and of itself is a game where you're going to have, in real life as well, where you're chirping back and forth, you're capping, and you're going back and forth with your opponent. And then there's, there's a lot of tension involved with it. And of course, you're, dealing with your teammates, and you're coming up with the right strategy. Someone just missed you on an open read, or, your teammate just fumbled it because they did the wrong thing, or whatever the case may be. So obviously just a lot of tension that can be involved and a lot of high stakes type of action that can be involved, which again, when it's done right, is nothing's better. Like nothing compares to that. But then of course, just naturally when it comes down to a ton of different personalities, sometimes you also have those heated moments. So I think, when it comes down to like our Discord, and our community that we're building here is really that, like, we're trying to make sure that we want it to be very competitive, but at the same exact time, we also want it to be respectful from the standpoint of, we're building something here. And most of the people have really bought into that. And I think at first it was a little bit more hectic, and now it's really more like a brotherhood, which is, again, something that I'm incredibly grateful for, because it's become a very close-knit community. But at the same exact time, I would be lying if I would say there aren't some people there that are really, really competitive to the point that it can kind of rub people the wrong way sometimes. So with all that being said, in terms of the community with our Discord and our internal group and things like that, I just think it's one of those things where it's like we want to play hard, but at the same exact time understand that, like, there's a boundary and a line that we don't want to cross. But at the same exact time, in terms of like, staying close with the community, I think, we've done a pretty good job of that when it comes down to the people that have come down and played the game. And I think some of them would probably agree, is that, like, we really want to be transparent with everything that we're building. We've, like just this past week, we had to speak with a bunch of players about some of the offensive and defensive line mechanics. And we went and literally showed them the back end, behind the scenes, under the hood, aspects of the game to say, this is exactly what's happening. This is why it's happening. And again, that was kind of an eye-opening thing for them, because they were doing some button things wrong, but at the same exact time, they also didn't realize the depth of what they could do. So just things like that makes, like I always say, like, if they present an issue to us, maybe they're doing something wrong, maybe we're doing something wrong, but at the end of the day, no matter what, we're going to grow from it on each side. So that's the most important thing, finding that growth opportunity and then executing on that in and of itself. So that's really what we're hoping for within the community. But I would say that so far we're certainly along that path, and I'm really grateful for that.
I honestly, I will say, I've been in a lot of betas, alphas of games in my life, and this is definitely one of the most unique ones, given the fact, I will say this is the first time I've actually been in a Discord with a developer. I remember you were showing me the awareness, the awareness changes prior to getting made, and like seeing that happen under the hood. And folks, I'm telling you, I implore you to if you're really serious about, like he said, playing something competitive, being like a member of a community like this, like that banter and that competition, I think is it's extremely important. You know what I mean? And if you can come in and be a level-headed person and be competitive, I think you're gonna have an experience like no other. And it sounds like really cliche and corny, because every movie says it's the best box office hit ever, and everybody says they're number one. But this is truly like a very, very fresh perspective. And the way that you worded that, I think, was perfect. You know what I mean? Having that healthy banter and that rapport with the community is absolutely important. I think a lot of developers kind of, I'm not going to say they miss it completely, but finding that healthy balance between, this is how our game is, and this is why it's playing that way, we're not going to change it, rather than always seeking to make that adherence. I think it's a lot more important for a vision to maintain its fullness rather than adhering to the, you may have an audience that you want the game to get to, but I think I've even heard you talking about, wanting the game to be seen in a certain light, and maybe even playing it a certain way. So even whenever you have that pushback against things, the community seems really tight-knit on even a lot of the changes. I'm sure that there's some people that have some negative sentiment about the awareness, but I think collectively it's been a phenomenal change for what ESG brings to the table in the first place.
Yeah, and speaking to that in terms of like the awareness in and of itself, like it's one of those things that even internally, as our team discussed the awareness and the pros and cons for it. And of course, as anyone gets to play the game, they'll certainly understand what we're talking about. But in terms of the field awareness, like it was one of those things where no matter, like, give me 10 different people, you'll have 10 different opinions on it. But ultimately, we knew that something needed to be done because it was just way too competitive and way too difficult for an offense to advance the ball. So with that being said, we took a stab at what I believed was the best way to go about it. And ultimately, I think everyone's first reaction to it is like, whoa, this is something I never would have conceived before.
Never.
And then some people are like, I hate it. Some people are like, I'm open to it. And some people are like, yes, I love this on, the very first instance. But they're pretty much like, whoa. And when someone plays now, after dealing with no awareness and then obviously now dealing with the awareness, I think most people who have played with it for quite a few weeks actually really have fallen behind. Like, I actually do see the reason for it, and I'm with it, and so on and so forth. And then you'll have someone come in for the very first day and say, whoa, right? And then what is this? And they don't know the other side of the coin because
what it was like before. Exactly.
So the key for us
the
is
dark
again,
times.
just trying to trying to find a space where, whether it's in 60s or 70s or 80s lobbies, you're able to compete without it. And then in the 90s lobbies, it's a requirement. We do feel like the most competitive people will be in the 90s lobbies, and therefore it must be a requirement there. But again, it's just one of those things. We want to be inclusive. We want everyone to have fun, but we also understand, with respect to all the gamers out there, if you say you're the best, everyone says they're the best.
Yeah.
But that's on us now to make it a little bit tougher, make the skill gap there, and then see if you could adapt to it. And then if you could do all that and then say it, well,
then you might be the best.
Then you might really be.
Then you really might be the best. Couple closing thoughts. And then I guess this would be directly to the community, I guess, people on the fence. So for people that are still, I guess you'd say, on the outside looking in, whether they're skeptical or simply just waiting, what would you tell them about, what would you say to kind of pull that person in, that's going to be waiting for ESG or mildly skeptical about it?
Well, the first thing I would say is, again, should you have a PlayStation, please come through and try it yourself. There's
we'll have the link down here somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. The link is
you
there.
can play it.
Now, with that being said, if you don't have a PlayStation, or if you're looking to wait until it's out on retail or whatever the case may be, again, the game is free to play. But when it comes down to those things, that's completely fine. I would just say, again, the thing is that one thing that I would like the community to understand is that, again, this is a very, very, very small indie studio that developed this game, founded by myself and Lamont, and then for, again, 95% of our journey had 2 engineers working on this title. The thing is that we are a small team, but I do believe that we've taken leaps and bounds every single day, month, year in terms of the development process of this video game. So I'm excited to have everyone come on board and play it. But what I will say is, again, like, even though I do say this, and say I do believe it's the most competitive sports game that I've ever played, and I truly believe that, I also understand that we're not going to be like number one everywhere, or even at the top of the list everywhere. And with that being said, maybe it's graphics, maybe it's gameplay, maybe it's commentary, maybe there's certain things that you're looking for that we're not going to be as polished as you would think you would like it to be in day one. But at the same exact time, the one thing I do believe is that we're certainly heading in that right direction. So it only happens with the community's help, where really honestly we move as the community allows us to move, and really supports us with that, and we're grateful for that. So if you're interested in coming to try it out, phenomenal. But at the same exact time, one thing I will say to that is, the sooner that you come to try it out, the better, because ultimately one thing that we want to do for sure is kind of roll all of this out with a tournament. And in that tournament, we would be giving away money. The goal is to give away $10,000 for the opening tournament of ESG football. Exactly.
Bands. Trying to get a little 10 bands. I was trying to make a little 10 bands.
You and your squad come together and see if you guys can win some money. But again, we really want this to be competitive. So to do that, that's one of the things that we certainly believe is the right way to go about things.
Absolutely. I guess closing thoughts. I always personally feel like a healthy competitive scene is something that can nurture any game that has a reasonable following, truly. And I've always believed that, just because those people that are competitive, that like a game, they're gonna play it. You know what I mean? It's like, even me personally, it's just really that simple. I haven't played Fortnite competitively at a professional level in like 6 years, but I still hop on there because that game, from a builds perspective, offers something that I can't get anywhere else. And I feel like that's what ESG is ultimately doing for football. And closing thoughts, I guess you could say, for everybody, I wanted to say once again thanks to Ray, for coming back and pulling the veil a little bit on ESG's development, where it stands, and where they're headed. So obviously much appreciated for having you here. Folks, if you guys have any questions that you might want to post to Ray, I know he's always lurking in the comments, or they have people that are looking, you might get an answer from him prior to SGN Hub sometimes, depending on some of the context of the interview. I can't really stress enough, folks, if you want to get your hands on the game, if you want to be involved in this tournament that Ray is talking about when the game is coming out, and be instrumental in the development of this game and the success of it, and you're looking to see something fresh in the football market, folks, I'm telling you right now, I can't preach it any louder. ESG genuinely is that breath of fresh air, and it's something that you're going to see a lot of creators that are going to be eventually getting their hands on it. They're going to be more than likely echoing that sentiment, because it's something that's very different, it's very innovative, and we can't thank the guys over there at the dev team enough. Shout out to Jordan, all the other folks, Mac, Chris, everybody else that I haven't gotten to speak to in a while. You guys are absolutely killing it. Shout out to anybody managing the community, and all the growth to everybody, all the legends that we have, all the OGs, Fuego, Bummy, Willie, and the people that are still there helping out with all the other new folks. Like, comment, subscribe. Ray, if you have any closing thoughts, feel free to let those be known.
I mean, again, last time I came here, I had to eat crow because we had a tournament. Jay said we wouldn't win. We, in fact, did not win. The deal was I would have to say that we would not win. But if you watch that interview and go back, I did say the Empire will strike back. And we did. I mean, yeah, we did. So,
the Empire did strike back.
I think it's important to note that I did call that. And, the next tournament, we did come back and take that championship. So, again, all in fun. Certainly shout out to Smoke and Jay and the rest of the SGN team. And as you mentioned before, again, the OGs and the vets in the ESG community, obviously incredibly grateful for them. But at the same exact time, yeah, super excited about more people coming on board, helping us test the last few things that we need to just get right and get situated. But again, if you're out there and you have that interest, certainly looking forward.
You heard that, folks. You heard that, Connor. The last few things. You heard the way he said that. Yeah, the last few things. I could hear it.
Yes,
folks. I'm telling you.
I did say that. Yes.
Get in the waiting room and get your hands on this game, folks. I can't preach it enough, folks. It's been your boy Turk here at SGN Hub, and obviously Ray, one of the head developers, former professional gamer, jack of all trades. Once again, appreciate having you here. Folks, like, comment, subscribe. Check out the link. Not going to say it again. Peace.